right. Well, good day, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are listening or tuning in. Here's another Chairman episode. As you can tell, it's a new year, new episode. We are missing one chairman. We're down one chairman, which is okay. Mason is on a vacation with his family, so we wish him the best and hope he has safe travels back. But today, Grant and I are going to dive in to another pedal board building episode, and this is going to be based around hybrid rigs.
Oh.
So we did one a couple weeks ago on like the worship essentials, or how to build like an essential, pun intended, pedal board around that type of sound or system. But what I've realized and seen and been requested lately from clients is how these hybrid setups. And you might be asking, like, what's a hybrid setup? And it could be anything from like a quad cortex and analog pedals to HX stomp and analog pedals, digital pedals. I mean, it's there's all these different combinations that it could be. It could be an FM9 and analog pedals. So before we dive in, Grant, do you want to say hi, or do you want to say anything before we dive into this fun topic?
Hello. Yeah, I'm excited to chat about this. This is something that, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when we started building rigs, hybrid boards weren't really a thing. And now it's probably the most common build that's done, as far as, and this depends how far you take the definition of a hybrid rig, but in my mind, it's a combination of single analog pedals in its most simplest definition with some sort of multi-effects, like what you were saying. Quad cortex, if you aren't familiar, listener, is a multi-effect, does a whole bunch of things in the one unit. And the hybrid portion, I think most people, when these first came out, would do either a quad cortex, or way back in the day, like I remember my first one was a Boss GT 1000, like it was gold, expression built in / volume on the right, which you could program to be wah, all these foot switches across the front, and you'd program in all your distortion, overdrive, delay, reverb, chorus, whatever you want, into the one unit. And now we have come to the place where obviously these have moved drastically forward to something like a quad cortex. And people are using the quad cortex, which could easily be a pedal board in and of itself, and adding in their favorite overdrives or their favorite analog effect, either in the effects loop or before the unit. And that is now their one pedal board. And it's a great way to get some of your favorites with something that is easy to navigate and will have every sound you could ever have with capturing abilities. So you can record your own amps and use them in the rig as well without actually having to bring your amp. Like, there's so many possibilities here, which is why I'm excited about the topic today. So all that to say, Brian, I'm pumped. I can't wait to get into this.
All right, well, let's dive in. We're going to be, if you're listening or if you're watching, you get extra bonus. We're going to be using pedalplayground.com again this week, which is going to be super handy because it just kind of helps you visualize what we're doing, which is super cool. And if you don't know about Pedal Playground, it is a free site. They do not sponsor the podcast. They did do a try run with us, which was great, and I use it all the time. I like it because of the type of stuff that they have on here. All these different types of pedals. So like if you click, you can see a drop down, like 1981. A lot of times he does all these different colors of the pedals too, which is really cool. So there's just all these different companies that he has imported for pedals as well as pedal boards. So what I would like to do is we'll start off with like the brain. Let's start with the brain. So I think it would be appropriate to choose our friends at Neural DSP probably for this first one.
And while Brian's, absolutely. And while Brian's bringing this up, if you guys want to watch instead of listen, you can head over to the Vertex Effects YouTube channel, and all Chairmen episodes are streamed with not just audio, but video as well on the Vertex Effects YouTube channel. So if you want to see what we're doing, that's the way to go about it. But we will use word pictures like you wouldn't believe to make sure that you can understand what's going on if you're listening only.
Plus, you get that extra bonus of seeing Grant's beautiful face. So, I mean,
for some that's a bonus. For others, let's just stick with a podcast. You know, let's do our brains a favor here.
I do like your hat, though.
Oh, thank you.
Is that a Goodwood? That's your Goodwood hat, right?
Well, yeah, one of Tyler got it. One of the amazing guys that works with me. He got it at our planning retreat. Just showed up, gave me and Chippo these hats, and I'm not the merch guy. You know, I'm not so much of a merch guy myself, but I was pumped, so I'm sporting it.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it. All right, so we'll do a couple different ones. I have the Nano on here.
So the Nano Cortex being the smaller version of the Quad Cortex, capturing kind of abilities and mini multi-effects. I'm
going to pull a couple things out just so we can do a couple different options. Because I don't want to, I don't want to limit it. I don't want it to only do a couple things. I mean, I don't think Plethora is on here.
Brian just brought the Fractal FM9 onto the screen as well, which is a great multi-effects unit.
I'm pulling just a couple
TC Electronics Plethora, which is I don't know if this is fair if you would say this, Brian. It's a more limited multi-effects unit. Definitely not the flexibility capabilities of a Quad Cortex or FM9, but super easy to use. Great sounds on it, and you can kind of just get it up and running really quickly.
Let's go with no, that might be too much. Let's not do a mono large. Maybe we do like a mono medium board.
Yeah, that's nice.
Something really. Let's do something like that.
It's still pretty big, but I think we can fill it. If anyone can fill this thing, I think we can.
Well, the cool thing with Pedal Playground too is you can tap on the item in the right top corner. It will tell you. So like it says it's 24 by 14 and a half. So yeah, it's. I mean, I'm running a 24 by 12 board with my Strymons in the effects loop. So, okay. So I would say let's do something of like, we have the effects loop. There's two routes you could go with this because you could either do, you could add a couple wet effect pedals and, load up your quad with overdrives, captures and stuff. Like me, I don't have analog overdrives on my board. I've captured all of them.
Well, I think this is a really good place to stop and chat for a second.
Yeah,
as absolutely. In we have and just to and I don't know the FM9 here as well as you do, Brian. So chime in here on the FM9 if this is possible. But we have a Quad Cortex on a pedal board right now. The Quad Cortex, like I was saying before, is capable of doing whatever sounds you need for the most part. So why would you ever need to add another pedal in, an analog pedal, or even some standalone digital pedals? And in my mind, and I'm looking for you to challenge me here, Brian, my mind is for an overdrive, you can capture an overdrive, a pedal that doesn't have any time-based effects. So you have a snapshot in time, and overdrive doesn't change from 1 second to the next. So you can capture an overdrive. And you can just load that into your Quad Cortex, and it'll become part of the Quad Cortex of that capture. So in my mind, I would put an overdrive on a hybrid board if it's an overdrive pedal I'm kind of constantly tweaking. So from venue to venue, I'm always changing it, or from song to song, I know I like to tweak it. You could capture every combination of that overdrive and load it into the Quad Cortex. So you could do TS9 bright, TS9 dark, TS9 gain dimed, and you could capture all of these variations. Or if you just love that pedal, you could just not capture it and put it on your hybrid rig. And so in my mind, candidates for me are things that either I can't capture and is not available on the multi-effects. Maybe, I don't even know, I'm just going to make something up. Some sort of specific chorus pedal that isn't available on the Quad Cortex or FM9, or some sort of pitch or octave thing that just, can't quite be replicated. Those are the types of pedals I'm putting on, or an overdrive pedal that I'm always changing, or some sort of unit that interacts with my guitar in a way that a capture just quite won't do. These are the areas I'm thinking about. What would you change about my definition there? What would you just push back? And if you could digitally slap me in the face right now for saying the wrong thing, what would you pick?
No, 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 no. I mean, honestly, that's exactly right. Is because like so many of these units, like they do the modulation, delay, and reverb really well. Some of the overdrives and how they react and respond might be a little bit different, but that's the cool thing about the capture, like you just said. It's a snapshot in time. So finding, that one overdrive that you have and adjusting it to the different settings and capturing it, excuse me, is really handy, and it really helps cut down. So I think when it comes down to it, doing like external, like me doing the Strymons, I do it for convenience because I know those delays and reverbs really well. I got them really dialed in, and yes, I could get them really dialed in on the quad cortex, and I have. I've ran just the quad cortex single by itself for a whole year. It was a bachelor for a whole year.
Oh my
Did
gosh.
it all by itself. Like it did it all by itself. But I started realizing the timeline or the delay in the reverb. I was never really happy with the reverb sound I was getting, and I got my hands on a Big Sky again, so I was like, oh, what the heck. But for the delay, I always would go down to adjust settings, and when I would be playing, it was always really frustrating to have to tap on the screen and do all these, and I mess it up, and I would have to save it, and I'd stand back up and start playing. Whereas the timeline, it was so second nature for me. So I think
Just
that's
because you
where
spent the last 10 years with the timeline, right?
Literally 10 years. I mean, it's just the MIDI, the capability of it and stuff is really easy. And the way I have it programmed now, and I'll end up posting this on, because I use the stock Fender amps that they recently released. So I'll put it on my cloud shortly, but it just shows like how I have my preset set up. But it's like now that it's all programmed, it's just a matter of changing the BPMs sometimes for the songs. I might eventually start saving them per song, but that's just a lot of extra work that I don't know I really want to do right now. So it's just one of those tap. And that's the cool thing is that you can set the tap switch on the quad cortex to be like a clock. So like you can actually do the settings. So when the LED turns red, it'll send tap tempo externally out to other pedals, which is
for a hybrid rig. That's pretty handy.
It really is. And even then you could, go MIDI out into an external box. Like the Pirate MIDI guys are coming out with some really cool like utility boxes. Like they just released, or they're going to be releasing one that can do like, or Morningstar, they do the same thing. It's like they can do tap outs or MIDI out through these boxes. But like the Pirate one, they're doing to where it can actually change presets on the Tonex one, which is really cool because that's not actually a capability. So there's like stuff like that you can incorporate the quad to do and stuff, obviously the quad stuff. But for like this setup, like I actually have a client who does electric and acoustic.
Yep.
So, you may just be like, oh no, I'm an electric player and I fill up all 4 lines of effects, which is, it's a lot of effects. But like this, I think this hybrid system would be really handy to do like splitting it, some acoustic, some electric. Man, sorry guys if I'm yawning so much. I just got a new dog, and he's a 6-week-old puppy, so I'm not sleeping very well. So sorry for the yawning. But for this setup, I would say it's like picking like, okay, let's not go overdrives. Let's do expression. Let's
I was gonna say expression would be the first thing I'd add to this board.
And you could even do 2 if you really wanted, but I mean, you could also do the mission one where it has like the toe switch, or the A3 that does the toe switch.
And I know you're picking A3.
I was gonna pick A3, but I'm gonna do something different today.
The Lely dual expression has a toe switch as well.
Yes, I like the Lely. I
know that we sit on the opposite sides of the fence on this one, so I'm happy for A3. I think you caved to me last time, so I'm happy for
no,
A3.
I really do like the Lely. Okay. The Lely is really good for. I like them both.
So
I like
why
them both,
expression?
But I really like
why expression for a multi effects or hybrid rig?
So for the expression in this circumstance, so basing it off of the quad cortex, it has 2 expression jacks, but you can choose per preset, per scene, per whatever, however you want to describe it, as you can set what those expressions are doing. So like you can have it set to do a volume block. So you could do vibe swells. or you can go to the next preset and now or like I use it in scene mode. So it goes from scene or whatever, each scene. I think it's scene. Honestly, I don't remember.
The terminology changes from company to company, doesn't it?
It's so confusing. Going from like a line 6 HX effects to doing a fractal for a couple weeks to tune the quad cortex. All the names. I basically go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Those are how I jump around, and it changes my combinations. There's no gap. There's only a gap when I bank up to a different number. But for this, like, 1A, let's say 1A could be with a volume, but then 1B could have a whammy on it. So you can change that expression to do with a whammy or whammy. One of my old, it could be a wah sound.
Yep.
I keep saying whammy, but I mean wah. So it could do wah, or then the next one, it could be a cool swelly reverby patch, and you're controlling the mix and the decay. Like there's all the that's what the expression can do.
And with this being the context of a hybrid rig, you plug the expression pedal into the multi effects. In this case, a quad cortex is still on screen. And it will, like you're saying, control everything within the quad cortex that you tell it to. And you can control multiple things at the same time. Or you can also use the MIDI out to talk to the external MIDI control pedals, if you have any, on your hybrid rig. So Brian has his Big Sky, and you could send expression values over MIDI to those units as well at the same time, controlling decay or controlling mix level, controlling any parameter that you can externally control with MIDI, you can now also control with expression at the same time. Super powerful. But I would say the biggest thing for the majority of you, like if you're listening to that saying, that sounds like too much programming, I'm not going to do that. The biggest thing is you can switch back and forth between volume and expression, and your expression could just pull back your level, increase a boost. It could pull back your decay on your, delay inside the quad cortex. And you can just do very simple things as well. And it can be quite nice. And you can get creative. It's definitely a creative tool. It's not just, tweaking presets. The expression control is kind of like being able to turn a knob on any pedal or any block at will with your foot. Yeah. So it's great. Yeah. I think expression is probably one of the most handy things you can have on a hybrid rig, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'm really basic. I only use mine as a volume. I don't have any.
You're just a basic, I
don't do
Brian.
Tremolo speed.
I was going to call you a basic something else, but it's a family-friendly podcast, so I went with another B word, Brian. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, basic is great. And keeping things simple and usable, and I think that's another big mistake people make is, yes, expression can do all that, or this pedal can do 1,000,001 things, but if you can't easily access it live, you might as well not be there. Like, you need to be able to wrap your head around it, program it, and remember to use it all at the same time. Yes. You know what I mean? And so don't just go to town just because you can.
Yes, that's where it gets tricky. It's just some of this stuff you're always going to hear the argument. People are like, oh, well, like as soon as I posted mine. And I did mine on a whim, which is funny enough. I was at a client's house doing a video install for his studio, and I built a board for him, and it's blacked out. I actually have it here because we're putting it into a rack for him, but it had a blacked out quad cortex with the gold switches, a blacked out Mercury X, a blacked out LVX, and a blacked out Mission Expression on a custom creation board. And I always liked the idea of that. So funny enough, the 2 hours before the next day, before I had a rehearsal, I decided to completely pull my quad cortex off and move it over to do to make these changes, and I added these cables and everything, which was like, my wife's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm doing something, like, let me just do it. So, and I did it, and I loved it. It was really great. It was, it was just one of those, for me, it was such a convenience thing. But moving on, I threw up a timeline as an option. I think before I do a timeline, because because the quad only has 2 mono, you either have, a mono send and return or in a mono send return 2. So you have send and return 1, send and return 2. So you have 2 mono loops, or you can do 1 stereo loop.
Yep.
So like in this circumstance, whatever you pick, I would ideally say should be MIDI capable, because if you leave that effects loop on, you can then MIDI control it. And I haven't found a bad modulation sound on this unit. So like I personally want to put a modulation, but if you could pick, and this is whatever you want, Grant, if you could pick something, what do you think that you would throw on here? I already got
as in modulation timeline. Or just any
modulation or reverb or whatever you're thinking.
Oh, well, I'm
going to effects
where
loop.
My head is at right now is probably less about ease of access for my personal thing, because I'm not really gigging right now. So
yeah,
I have the time to create sounds and blocks in the quad cortex and, do all that.
Yeah.
So my main thing is what out there is so unique that the quad cortex probably won't get it in the future. Like, because you can't put every single sound into one unit. It'd be too confusing, too much to navigate. It's just impractical. You got to cover the basics and do the basics well, and then add in a few colors on top of that. And so in my mind, pedals I've been using recently, and they have knocked Strymon off the top of my list, is the is the Mercury X and the LVX. And so if I had to pick one, it would probably be the Mercury X. Because I can, again, if you're a basic Brian for expression, I'm pretty basic when it comes to delays. But man, I love messing around with a reverb. And the reason I would choose the Mercury X, it does the reverb thing, yes, but the way they've set it up as kind of a modular type unit is you can put preamp, overdrive sounds, filters, but anywhere in the chain of events of a reverb. So there's the input, there's the effects loop, there's there's pre-effects, post-effects, and then the output section. And by moving this overdriven or filter type sound around in the different spots within the signal chain, within the reverb, you get some crazy sounds. And it's just, it is quite detailed, and that sounds like it's really complex, but it's really not. And they've done it in a way that's quite easy. I mean, if I can understand it, anyone can. And so I've really started enjoying creating reverb sounds with the Mercury X, and to a degree where I probably love it so much because it sounds great, but it's also so unique how they've set it up. And so Quad Cortex isn't going to be able to do that. And I don't think they should. I should highlight that. I don't think they should get into that kind of detail because it's just going to be too much for a multi-effects unit. And so that's where I would probably put the Mercury X in there as far as wet effect.
Yeah. And I would, the cool thing about, like I said, the system is the fact that you can utilize both inputs and you can split out, and then you can make it an acoustic electric setup. So like there's a lot of really cool things. Before we move on for our next pedal that I want to pick, because I have an idea of how I want to utilize this board in multiple ways, is I want to talk about a couple of our sponsors that make the podcast possible. And the first are going to be the guys over at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas. They are 20 minutes away from me, and I see them a couple times a week. I used to see them for 6 years every single day. And they are a great bunch of guys, Brian and Shane and Trey and Taylor and Daniel. Go check them out at guitarsanctuary.com. All of the pedals that we're going to be talking about today are going to be linked below to the Guitar Sanctuary. So go check them out. Use them for, buying your gear, your amps, guitars. If you're local, bring a guitar in if you're looking to trade it and get something new. So you won't be disappointed. You can also shoot them a text at the phone number that they have. You can call or text them or email them. So reach out to them. They'd love to help you, get you set up for this new year. New guitar, new amp, new pedal, whatever you're thinking about, new pedal board build. You never know. So go check them out, and you won't be disappointed. Next are going to be the guys over at Neural DSP, who we have talked about just a little bit so far. And they are some of our favorite people to talk to. I mean, they released the Quad Cortex, the Nano Cortex, all their plugins. I use their plugins daily with all my tutorials and stuff. It's just become such a convenience level. I never realized how convenient plugins were until I got them, I will say. So, and they have a code, Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 30% off. That's 70% away from free if you're doing the math.
On their plugins.
And on their plugins, I have to clarify, it's on their plugins only. If you thought 30% on the quad, that would be a really great deal, but this is on their plugins, which is still a great deal. So, and think about it, this too is if you have a quad Cortex, not the Nano, if you have the quad and you buy some of their plugins with 30% off, you can load those plugins onto the quad Cortex. There's slowly implementing more and more every couple months or so. So they should be coming out with more. I'm super excited when they come out with the Morgan Amp Suite because I use that one very often. I have the Mateus one and I have the Pliny one, a couple other ones, and they are fantastic. So check them out, neuraldsp.com. Go use that code. Let them know that the Chairman sent you. You won't be disappointed. Moving back, I guess forward, because moving forward, whatever. Back to the hybrid setup, so we'll just say. I think for this setup, which would be really unique, is the fact that we could externally, we could throw like an H90 or something into this. Yeah, this, you might think, wow, that's really obnoxious. But it could, honestly, my
brain is heading that direction.
Think about it.
I'm going to be honest with you.
It could be a little obnoxious, or it could not be. I mean, if you think about it, it kind of depends. Like, look at that. That's a lot of computer power right there, and it's one of those things that you could utilize this in a acoustic / electric standpoint. You could get a acoustic electric custom junction box from Grant with Goodwood Audio, which they do some beautiful boxes. And if I had all the budget in the world, I think I would just keep buying custom junction boxes from you guys, because the stuff that you guys come out with are really, really cool. And I think like a system like this, which is really cool, is you could easily dedicate all of your top pedals to, the electric side. So like the Mercury X, the Timeline, the H90, to do a lot of your modulation stuff. But then you can go into, I know we still have some space here, so we'll have to figure out what to do with it, which I'm sure won't be hard. But you can utilize this type of rig to do two different things. You could have, a patch box underneath that has 2 guitar inputs, or it has an AB switch or something, or whatever you're wanting to do. And you can go into both inputs of the quad, and then that can split between an electric and acoustic point. So then you're kind of deciding what you're going to do. And you can also have 2 different rigs essentially on one 24x14 board, and you can still get all the sounds that you want in a way, and you're not using up all of your DSP power. So that's what I'm thinking.
And I think another good thing to bring up here as well is, and I don't know if the FM9 is, if you can do this, I assume you can, but with the Quad Cortex, you can run multiple rigs at the same time as well, which is a little variant on what you just said, as in, there are blocks on the Quad Cortex where you choose your effects and where the effects loop goes and all that routing. But you could run your electric chain at the same time as your bass player is running through a separate chain on the same Quad Cortex. And you could control that a whole number of different ways. But it's really cool to think what you can actually, routing-wise, signal chain-wise, patching, what you can come up with on a rig like this. So whether you play synth bass on one song and you want to run a couple effects on it, and then you play 4-string after that, they can both be running through the same Quad Cortex, and depending on the patch, different effects as well, even different off-board effects or hybrid effects that we have on screen. And so it is pretty incredible when you think what you can come up with, especially if you're a multi-instrumentalist for your gigs or your sessions. You can do quite a bit. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we were talking, I was feeling a little crazy and taking the timeline off.
Oh, here we go. I feel better about this.
I actually think changing the size to a small.
You know what I would like to add to this board if we're getting into, it's not going to work on a small though. I'm going to ruin that.
But it's okay. I got an idea.
I would, as far as pedals that are hard to replicate or quite unique, I would probably, just for the sake of having some fun, would probably want to put a Keeley Octosi on here.
Okay.
It's a pretty fun pedal. And I think that's the type of pedal that you could very easily get away with on a board like this.
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and like you know, maybe I'll put back the medium just for the rail. Is that? Oh, that's like their pedal train. Yeah. For the medium one.
So Brian's just currently looking for a pedal board. We're back to a mono angle board. What's this line called again? It's not, they don't call it an angled board, but that's what I call them for the mono.
I think it's just their mono medium.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think there's an actual name.
I love these boards.
Yeah, these are, I haven't used the rail yet. But I've used these boards a lot, and their folded edges are really good. They're really clean,
strong.
I've modded a few of them to add like a panel on the back and stuff. Kind of like how Bestronix adds a rack panel to the back of the pedal train stuff. I've actually put a panel, like a rack panel, or like those old Creation panels.
This is available on your OnlyFans site. Hey, you drilling out the holes and modding the mono pedal board. Well,
on the back, there's one hole. So I can fit the plate over that hole and then add one more external hole, which it's not always super clean. I mean, it is clean. It looks really clean, especially from the back side of it. But yeah, it's definitely a convenience factor. But for this board, I definitely think the Octosi, I think moving the timeline off, we can get away with a delay or modulation because the H90 is dual, so we can do two things at once, which is really cool. But like the Octosi, that's one that you really can't put it into the effects loop because it's mono. And where it is in the chain, like where would you put this? Would you
very
put this
early
before?
in the chain? It's a Big Muff style with an octave, so I would probably put this first.
Okay, and with something like that is like you could, if you are putting external pedals, and I threw this little DPC micro from Disaster Area Designs on the screen. They have it in a switched or switchless version. I would probably suggest a switchless version because you could put something like this underneath the board. I guess you could put it on top,
which is a few extra loops, right?
Yeah. So what it is DPC micro is 3 external loops that you can put stuff in. So like I would probably put this under the board. Like you basically go into this box, then out of this box into the quad cortex, and then go through the rest of your stuff, because you could put the Octosi in a loop. If there are certain pedals that you're thinking like maybe you bit the bullet and you bought a real Klon. Maybe you dropped 10 grand on a real Klon or however much they are now. I think they're like what?
I think you can only buy them in Bitcoin now. Yeah, you can only, it's 1 Bitcoin or more. Yeah, it's about 100K.
Nice. So, I mean, hey, worth the money if you have that extra pocket change. But like, if you have something like that, you could, essentially put it into this loop, and the quad can still control it. So you can do a toggle on, toggle off, and you're not having to do pedal dancing. You can do it from here. You can set it a preset. It will do different combinations. So you could do a couple things like that, just so you don't have to step on it. But, if you're feeling like you want to step on it, you could easily step on it. But I like that pick. It's a really good pick. What else are you thinking? I don't use fuzzes. I don't use any of like that kind of stuff. So I haven't really dove into the quad stuff.
I would probably, if this was my only rig and I'm assuming I'm using the either amp capture or amp modeling on the quad cortex, like an amp sim style block, I would probably want to put some sort of tube preamp on here as well. That could run most likely right before, and this depends if I'm doing a multi-instrumental type thing. If I was, this wouldn't work, but some sort of tube preamp I would personally like. I don't think it's mandatory by any means, but this is my rig, so you can't tell me I'm wrong, right?
Of course.
I love what they add to an amp sim style board. If I was doing captures, like capturing my twin or my matchless or whatever, I probably would not do that. If I wanted or liked the sound of a tube style pre or maybe a light overdrive or that Klon that I just bought for $1 I would capture that with my amp, and that would be my amp sound. But if I'm doing an amp sim style thing, they tend to, in my opinion, they often sound a bit better with a tube pre right before them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Yeah, I would say for this circumstance, let's say you're capturing, you've captured your amp, and so we don't need like a tube pre. Like I would say, like I captured a couple of my amps, which I need to do a new capture of because I learned real quickly how loud the capturing process is when you just mic up the speaker rather than doing it through like a aux box or 2 notes, a capture box or something. But yeah, so I would say something like that. We'd capture the amp. But yeah, I mean for like this, like where the quad has, the boost, it has other capturing options, so you don't have to really go too crazy. And this may be it. Like this may just be one of those things that you just decide like this type of setup is all you really need. They have single loop boxes that you could easily get from One Control. But like something like this is a hybrid rig, is you could easily do this type of option of sending your input out, your electric guitar input to number 1, and then what you're doing is you're going through the octosi and into the quad, and then you're doing the effects loop send to the H90 and to the Maris, and it's coming back in, and then it's going out. It could go out XLR, and then you could even route. You'd have to get a little fancy with it, but like you could get a DI box and go out the 1/4 inch and do like an acoustic, like a mono acoustic. So like there's a lot of really cool options. But if we were to take the quad off, be a little crazy, move a couple things off, and the fractal is obviously much larger. We're just going to remove the board in general. It is a lot bigger. It does have some more external loops on the back, which I've actually done a couple of these builds for a local client, and
with the FM9,
he really likes the fractal with the FM9. Yeah. So with the FM9, because on the FM9 it has is it 3 or 4 FM? Let me just look it up real quick. On the back of it, if you're listening, we are looking up the FM9 back panel right now. But on the back, so it has your normal in, out. So yeah, I mean, so you can do a couple of these different options, for headphones. You could do up to 3 expression pedals, which I've seen people do. So I mean, on like something like that, you could easily just say, no, I don't want a dual expression. Let's put 3. Does Laylee have a single expression?
I think they just have the dual, but the dual is a single expression. It just has different pot impedances.
Got it. All right.
But you could get something. I mean, if you were tight on space, you could get something smaller if you wanted.
Let's just be fancy. Let's just do 3. Let's just do it. I mean, this is already going to be a massively large board anyways. But like for something like this, what I've heard in the past too is on the FM9 stuff, I don't think that you can do, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know if you can do stereo amps like as the blocks, because one of my clients wanted to add a Tone X to his block, which was interesting. And I was like, well, why? What do you want to do that? And he goes, oh, well, it's because I can't do stereo. So, I mean, I don't know if that's
unlikely.
It doesn't seem right.
It doesn't seem right. I'm not saying that's the case, but that seems like an oversight.
And if you have FM9 or a fractal and you know about this, please leave a comment in the comments, because I would love to know. Because he said it and he was like, yeah, you can't. And I was like, are you sure? Because like I did a hybrid quad cord. Not I did no. We were on the Fractal when we moved to the quad, but he wanted to add like a Tone X1 or something, and I was like, no. I was like, look, the quad can do dual amps. He goes, oh, okay, yeah. My Fractal only does one, so I wasn't sure. That's why I switched over. But regardless, the Fractal has another really great amount of effects and stuff. It has a really cool editor that you can connect to, just like the Neural. So, I mean, for this, I would, you could still go with your trusty, maybe take off the timeline, or maybe take off the H90 and put a timeline back in there. But it's like this kind of thing, you could do the same type of concept of building out your staple pedals. So yeah, the 3 expressions thing is, that's just me being silly, honestly. But like you could easily do like the overdrives on here, because to my knowledge, FM Fractal stuff doesn't capture, to my knowledge. Okay. So having the Octasci on there, having a couple pedals that you like,
your clon. Is there a real clon in here? Can we put one on just to feel like we're getting closer?
Well, I feel like if you have 3 expression pedals, then you definitely have.
Is that the type of person that owns a clon?
I don't know. I just feel like, okay, are we doing silver? Or are we doing with a horse? What is the more fancy one? Is a horse?
Well, do we have all the different options here? I think we need to put on both. Let's ditch the Octasci and just put on 2 clones.
Let's just do it. Because why not? Let's just do this. Let's just remove these. We're going to go crazy. We're going to get a horsey. We're going to get the gold one. And for kicks and giggles, let's just put the KTR. Let's just do them all.
Yep.
Let's just do them all. All right. And we're not animals, so we're going to do silver into gold. And then we're going to be fancy, and we're going to put an RV5 on there. Because when you have 3 amounts of clones, let's just go RV2. Let's just do it.
There you go.
Let's just do something really basic.
There's the hybrid rig.
Look at that. That's but like for something like this, like whatever your pedals are, they could be all analog. You could do, you could go into your first pedal as your always on pedal, hit the FM, and then do the send and return to each of your 3 clones, because you sold your car.
Yeah.
You sold it.
And it was a Lamborghini.
Said, screw you, car. Yeah. You said, screw you, Lamborghini. I don't need you. I don't want 2 seats. I want 9 knobs.
Yep.
And
3 clones.
That's what you got.
4 clones,
3 clones,
I guess.
And 4. Well, and the horse. Yeah. But to be realistic in this circumstance, like obviously you're not gonna have that. I mean, unless you're Josh Scott. So Josh, if you're listening. But for this type of setup, like an FM, you could easily get away with doing it all on the unit. You could bring in a Nano Cortex. In the Nano Cortex, I've gigged with just the Cortex by itself, and I love it. I think it's great. But before we move on to our last section, which I think basing it around something a lot more smaller, like a Nano Cortex or an HX Stomp, I do want to throw it to you, Grant, to talk about our final 2 sponsors that make the podcast possible.
Well, you've already seen one of their pedal boards in this episode, which is Mono Creators. They do, as you've already seen, some of our favorite angled boards, and a big fan of kind of their approach to that. They have tons of room underneath, which for me is great because I love mounting pedals or junction boxes or whatever it may be underneath their board, and there just isn't that space under other people's boards of a similar style. And so big fan of that. Obviously, the soft bags we talk about a lot as far as the mono gig bags, whether it's a single or a dual, or maybe a soft bag for your pedal board. These things just don't break. They're lightweight, easy to transport. The zippers are going to be here on the next round of dinosaurs whenever they come in a couple million years. They just don't break down. So I'm a huge fan of buying quality stuff one time rather than replacing it over and over because you didn't buy quality the first time, and Mono fits that bill. So check out Mono, whether you need to get some accessories or a pedal board or a soft bag for your guitar. You're going to be pretty happy with what you see at monocreators.com. And you can also use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 10% off your order and save even more when you're there. I also want to tell you guys about Bestronix, or BTPA. And Brad is a good guy. Brad at Bestronix, he has the part numbers saved up in his head. Some people have gone as far as calling him the human Rolodex. I know why from firsthand experience. You ask him, do you have this, or does this type of thing exist? And he, sure enough, will send you a part number and a link and help you finish your pedal board. So whether you need bolt connectors or cable or a patch panel, maybe even a loom, or you want, Brad to finish off building your rig for you, they do that as well. All sorts of things available at BTPA. You can check them out. Ask for Brad. Tell him the chairman sent you, and use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, for 10% off your order. That's it for me, Brian. I'll throw it back to you.
Awesome. Yeah. So as you were talking about our wonderful sponsors, I went ahead and threw together just a really small little like nano size board, like something really, like a nano Cortex, something really basic. And the cool thing about like this type of option, and yeah, we know that you can't do stereo in, so you have to get a little fancy, I guess you could say, with this is like you could easily go into the top of the Cortex, and you can do a MIDI expression, with the expression pedal here, or you could do expression in, what I would do is this. I'll do expression into the MC6 and the MC6 up to the Nano Cortex for MIDI, because the cool thing with the MC6 stuff is you have, and I learned this recently on the studio board build, the Omni ports can do all sorts of different options, which is really cool. Yeah. Omni, which makes sense. But like, Omni port to the H90, to the Big Sky, to the Nano, and then expression out to here, is that you can tell it to do expression and do all the expression stuff. But you can then, after, when you plug into the Nano, it has a built-in tuner. It has all those options. And then you can go stereo out into your H90, into your Big Sky, because you could do
H9.
Like it has H9,
yes,
and not 90. I meant H9. Yep. So like you could do, like I had a similar setup, and I'll show you exactly. Like I literally had this exact setup, and I ran it for, honestly, it was this in an A3.
And on screen right now, we have a Pirate MIDI Bridge 4. Is that what that is? And then a Nano Cortex. Yeah.
So we had a Nano, so a Nano Cortex, a Pirate MIDI Bridge 4.
Which is a MIDI controller.
I sometimes forget to explain. Yeah. And then I think I had a HP power supply from Walrus on there. And then I had, I think I had one of your long lines on here too, because when in doubt, long line it out. You've heard that a couple times, right, Greg?
I haven't yet, but I'm going to put it on the website. Of course. Yeah, nice. That's perfect. Oh, that's a cool little board. I like that.
And it was really tiny. It was like a 11 by like 9. Like it was tiny. And the reason I did this is because I captured, I know we're kind of, like I had other stuff up here, but I'm trying to get to a point, is I captured my my Deluxe, my Fender Deluxe and my Jackson Newcastle. I captured them both just clean amp tone, and then I had a Brown Amplification Carbon X.
Yep.
I picked one up after our conversation with Mateos, actually, because we were talking about it, and I captured it in a couple different settings, and I put those different ones in the different like presets. So like each bank, I set them up, each foot switch to do, like if I can zoom in. Yeah. So each foot switch I did, clean delay, overdrive delay, or something like that. And then when I clicked them off, it went to like a global patch or something, and it was like a swells for reverb. But for doing something like this, it can really get really simple, because you can capture your amp tones with your overdrives and then use it here. They talked about that they're going to do some updates to the blocks, so you can actually capture and have a single overdrive in one of those spots rather than having to capture it in the amp, which would be really cool. But like I ran this one for over a month, and I really liked it. It was just one of those things that like I needed to use the pedals on my other stuff, so I kind of took it apart, and now I have my Nano somewhere around here. But the Nano Cortex is so small that you can easily fit it in a guitar case and take it, and like you don't even have to have the external controller. You don't have to have the long line, but you definitely want to, that's for sure. And but you could easily have some balanced 1/4-inch TRS to XLR cables for the Nano, and you go straight into a system. But for this, the onboard modulation was really cool, really good. It was a chorus. It's not really anything fancy. The delay was an analog delay. It did the job, and the reverb, actually, I really enjoyed the reverb. I like that mixture of a hull and the cloudish type of sound, depending on how you set it.
Yeah.
But for like this type of setup, you could easily do something like this, or you're like, no, forget that. I don't need, I don't want to use the onboard reverb. You could easily put a Big Sky in there, or you could easily put, a Wallace Audio. I don't know. Like I'm thinking of something small,
or something even like an
R1.
H90 that could do delay and reverb and chorus, or an H9 even if you have a MIDI controller, you could switch back and forth quite a bit. But
exactly.
yeah, there is a lot that you could do here in a small footprint,
so
which is great.
In such a small footprint, and you're not busting your back over it. I mean, I will say the new board I built, I did enjoy the backpack size board of just a quad Cortex, but there's that give and take you have. So like there's a lot of different options that you can come up with, but what it comes down to is utilizing stuff like the Bridge, or the Bridge 4, Bridge 6, or the MC6 Pro, or whatever, or some kind of the LT. The RJM LT is probably still one of my favorite little external MIDI controllers. It's a good size. It doesn't have all the screens and stuff on it, so it's not like the MC6. But for me, I know how to program it, so that's what makes it really simple, and I really enjoy it. But so having some kind of MIDI controller, even like I think some MIDI clocks and stuff can send PC messages, I think. So like having something that can send out, or MIDI Baby from Disaster, or having something that can do some of your sounds to make your life easier, I think goes a long way into just making like it a more enjoyable experience. Because you could, I think looking at it from a practical standpoint, I'm like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. You don't need to have all that. You don't need to have the FM9 and 4 clones or whatever. I think there's a part of it for, I think, musicians in general, that like we want to enjoy what we're playing, funny enough, how it feels in our in-ears if you're using in-ear monitors, how it feels if you're on the stage with an amp and speakers and everything, also how it sounds. So I think when it comes down to it, there's a lot of different options. The hybrid route, I think, is a really good cross of obviously old technology and new technology, because, if you're going to cap yourself on technology, like you might be still in a horse and buggy. Like if you never adapt to some new technology of pedals, you're never going to find some of those cool creative sounds, like plugging in the Nano Cortex for the first time, plugging in the Plethora from TC. Like if I found some really cool sounds, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I liked that sound. So I think, with these hybrid setups is you could easily go everything in the kitchen sink, or you could go, these are my essentials. This is what's going to get me through a thing without breaking the bank. And it's, really easily travelable. So like me, I would easily take the Nano Cortex, put it in my little sleeve of my Duesenberg case with a USB-C cable, and, put some cables in my backpack or whatever in the headstock, and put my Duesenberg and shut it, and I would fly with that. And I could easily get away with it, because the foot switches, you can program different toggling. It has the onboard tuner. It has a bunch of different options. So that's what I would say to kind of sum up. Do you have any final thoughts of hybrid rigs, or your approach, or your suggestions, or what you think would be best?
No, I really appreciate and enjoy hybrid rigs in general. I mean, I think even for my own builds for myself, I don't remember the last time I really built a board for me that didn't have some sort of hybrid component to it, just because it's so convenient. And I'm still not at the point where I would be willing to have a full board that is just a quad Cortex or just an FM9 or HX Effects or whatever. Not because of the lack of sound or the lack of options. I just like to have everything that I need to tweak often really easy and quick to access. And for the way that I play, that's what I prefer. A lot of other people, like professional touring musicians who you should listen to a lot more than me, that do this, 200 days a year, they get away with a quad Cortex and they love it. Everything's programmed, everything's ready to go. All their sounds are captured that they need or, built into the quad Cortex from the factory. And so for them, that works. And that's the best solution. But for me, I tweak my overdrives a lot. I tweak my, compressor quite a bit. And so, not that you could capture compressor necessarily, but there are just certain effects, even though they're in the quad Cortex and they sound good, I still, if I had my choice, if I could have my cake and eat it too, I would have quick access to a few key components. And so for me, a hybrid rig makes a lot of sense. I'm probably less likely in the quad Cortex or FM9 example, I'm probably less likely to go for wet effects being external to the quad Cortex or FM9 or whatever it might be. I'm more likely to put my analog dry, maybe a modulation as an external effect for the tweakability. And honestly, if we're being totally transparent, it's probably just a lot of nostalgia as well. I have a long, they feel like part of my family, like it feels weird to me to not put my TS9 that I've had for 10 years and not have it on a board. Like it just needs to be there or else it just doesn't feel like my pedal board. And so I probably don't have great reasons for a lot of these decisions, but they feel right when I'm building it, So
absolutely.
I think that's kind of a main thing. And then, I know we cover this a lot, but to power all of this stuff, again, I usually just tend to go for a Chalks power supply, and same one that I've had for years and years, and it just keeps going. And I don't think we really covered power all that much. The Walrus stuff, I don't have the years of track record that I do, but so far the Walrus stuff has been great. The power supplies, obviously there's Strymon and stuff, but I typically go for a Chalks supply. Just leaves me open to flexible outlets and all that. So as far as power, that's what I'm doing because low profile, easy to mount, easy to use, and I know it's never going to break.
And the fact that all the ports are all that variable voltage on like the DC.
So if I swap something out, which is going to happen, you can just change the voltage.
Click it. I did a travel board for Andy Timmons, and he's had a lot of like the Gen X power from Gig Rig.
Yep.
So all those powers are very dedicated to what the voltage is. And I was like, man, we're running tight on space. Let's do the DC7 and I can bolt it. It's a little bit slimmer than the Gen X, and the Gen X is still great. It's just space. We're on this little Vertex travel compact or whatever. It was 20 by 11, and we did the power, and then I used the Crux to power the Atom that he had on the board, and I labeled all the power, and I was like, okay, so I know you like switching up pedals. I know you like doing it. And I was like, if you get a new pedal and you're like, oh shoot, it's 18 volt, 12 volt. I was like, you just find which spot that is labeled and you just click it and it switches to that power. And he's like, are you really? I was like, yeah, that's how easy it is. Because the Walrus stuff is great. I have the HP on my board right now because it's so small. But if you're powering more than, Crux is 7 pedals. If you're powering 7 or plus more pedals, having the Crux in the
DC7
extension for the the DC7, and you maybe have an extension for 8, all that variable voltage is like, I did a build with you guys for a client where he had a DC7, 2 8s and a 4, and like it was this big, really massive build that we did years ago. And it was one of those, it had so much power, but they were all variable voltage, and it was just like, oh hey, yeah, I wanted to actually run that Cali at 18, and you just
Yeah.
clicked it, and it was awesome. I could talk circles around how much I love the chalk stuff.
Yeah,
But
it's awesome.
I would say the sun, like, closing is like, have fun with it. I think that's the great thing about the hybrid rigs is you can still have fun. There is like, it's like in a way a business pleasure kind of thing. Like, it's like you don't have to, it's like, when you go on a trip, it's like, oh, is it business or pleasure? It's like both, I guess. I don't like, it's the same thing as like guitar. Like, you can have all your core sounds, or you can have all your old school sounds or pedals or whatever you want, but you can also enjoy some newer stuff like the gig rig stuff, not gig rig, the nano neural DSP quad cortex stuff, or the fractal or the plethora or whatever. You can still utilize all those cool newer technologies with some old school stuff and have fun. So I think it's just do what you want with your rig. It's your rig when it comes down to it, and have fun doing it. So that's it. I don't have anything else to say. Do you, Grant?
No, awesome. Love it.
All right,
We'll see you guys soon.
Yeah. See you guys soon. All right. Bye, guys.